Hi, welcome to Miss Richardson's U.S. History 5-Minute Lectures. This information is U.S. Notes 5.8, Native Americans Fight for Equality. It covers information that goes along with the first section on your study guide. Remember, you have control over the lecture. Use your study guide to help you figure out what's important to write down, pause when you need to, rewind and rewatch if you need. Just take control. Let's go ahead and get started. So we've now looked at the fight of African Americans for equality in the U.S. and women's fight for equal treatment in the U.S. While there were some similarities, they were also focused on different goals and actions. Women were not the only group, though, who saw the civil rights actions of African Americans as incentive to fight for their own rights. Native Americans also desired to end their oppression and to gain fair treatment. Their history of mistreatment and inequality is different, but definitely not less harmful than the African Americans' experience. Historically, all the land that once belonged to Native Americans in North America was taken from them by immigrants. These immigrants moved the tribes from land they had lived on for thousands of years in order to farm and to settle. So, to make things even more unfair, often those tribes were forcefully moved from their traditional homeland to undeveloped, undesirable land in the West. They were often unprepared for the weather conditions, the housing, the lack of food, and they often became ill or died because of illnesses immigrants brought that the natives had no immunity to. So some natives fought back about this unfair treatment. One who was really well known, and you maybe have heard of this rebel, was Geronimo, who urged his people to fight back and not settle into reservations that the government put them on. The defeat of Geronimo and the closing of the American West marked the end of direct conflict between the U.S. government and the Native Americans in history, or at least until more modern history. So the Native Americans' lives didn't improve after that, though. Those on reservations were forced to live in extreme poverty. They had to remain on the reservation with no real hope of employment or income if they desired to hold on to their culture. If they wanted to teach their children their traditions and beliefs, they really could only do this on the reservation. So, into this environment, spurred by the civil rights movement, came the American Indian Movement, or AIM. AIM was formed in 1968 by Dennis Banks and George Marshall, two members of the Chippewa tribe. They began as a group that were focused on the problems of Native Americans who were living in cities, and then they expanded from there into other areas. So why cities, you might ask, since I just talked about reservations? And that's a great question. Let's tell you that. Many Native Americans moved to cities to escape the abject poverty, the terrible poverty on the reservations. They wanted jobs and careers that would sustain them and their families. However, they lacked the resources, the education, and the skills for this to happen because of having been raised on reservations, which actually led them to live in poverty in cities, just like on the reservations they were trying to escape. So AIM created neighborhood patrols in Native American areas, in city neighborhoods, to monitor the streets for illegal activities, for crime, and to help keep them safe. They also created these survival schools in the areas in order to teach culture and traditions associated with the native tribe. These schools were designed to keep the traditions alive and to help the culture survive outside of the reservations, so this became more of an option for people. So these actions and others were the earliest actions of the group. Now, as time went on, their goals broadened from helping members escape poverty to fighting for legal rights of Native Americans. Eventually, group members even fought for autonomy in local government issues. This means they wanted independence from local government control and wanted to create their own leadership. In addition, AIM also fought for control over natural resources on reservation land. They wanted the U.S. government and local governments to cede all control to them, both on reservations and on lands that had been illegally taken from them throughout history. And in order to control those lands, AIM actually demanded that the lands be returned to the tribes they were taken from. So, for example, in 1969, Native Americans, they weren't led by AIM in this case, but they were spurred by AIM, took over the island of Alcatraz, known as the Occupation of Alcatraz. They remained on the island for 19 months, claiming that since the prison had closed in 1963, the land was to revert back to the Native Americans. While unsuccessful in their ultimate goal of getting the land, this really did bring attention to the plight of the American Indians, which helped AIM gain momentum. Then in 1973, AIM led an occupation of Wounded Knee. This small town, the site of the Wounded Knee Massacre in 1890, was symbolic because of the history there, that massacre. This occupation became more dangerous than Alcatraz. Both sides were armed and shooting occurred frequently. 2 AIM members are verified killed, and 1 AIM leader actually disappeared and was thought to have been murdered by the other side. This standoff lasted for 71 days and brought more worldwide attention to the plight of the Native Americans. So as AIM made more and more demands, they became more and more radical. As they became more radical and these more radical goals came out, the actions taken to meet the goals became more radical, and that actually caused AIM to lose some popular support. So this is the end of Notes 5.8. Bring any questions you have to class. I'll see you tomorrow.